Myself, Dr. Bahul Vekaria. I am senior resident in UN Mehta Institute of Cardiology and Research Center. Today we are going to discuss patent ductus arteriosus. Patent ductus arteriosus is the most common type of extracardiac shunt and represents persistent patency of ductus arteriosus that connects arterial system and aorta in fetus. Ductus arteriosus is embryologically remnant of left-sided sixth aortic arch. Right-sided arch disappears, whereas left arch gives rise to ductus arteriosus by connecting it to left-sided dorsal aorta to left pulmonary artery. Risk factors for patent ductus arteriosus: maternal rubella infection. The first child is usually affected by rubella infection as a mother develops antibodies for the subsequent pregnancy. Birth at high altitude predisposes to patent ductus arteriosus owing to decreased oxygen tension. Premature birth and low birth weight baby are more prone to developing PDA. Females are affected twice as much as males. In infants born less than 28 weeks of gestation, there is 60% incidence of patent ductus arteriosus. The closure of ductus occurs functionally and anatomically. The functional closure of ductus occurs within first few hours of birth and is achieved by 10 to 15 hours and can extend up to few days. The functional closure depends on two things: oxygen tension in the blood and prostaglandins. For premature infants, prostaglandins are more sensitive and hence ductus closure can be achieved by NSAIDs. Whereas in full-term baby, the oxygen tension is the major factor that plays a role in closure of ductus. The shunt reverses from right to right shunt, that is oxygenated blood flows from aorta towards the PA as pulmonary vascular resistance decreases when the lungs expand and baby takes the first breath, as well as systemic vascular resistance increases. This leads to reversal of shunt, increase in oxygen tension and closure of ductus, as well as prostaglandin dehydrogenase is activated in the lungs, which causes decrease in level of prostaglandins and hence closure of ductus. For anatomical closure, there is infolding of endothelium and disruption of elastic lamina. There is diffuse fibrous proliferation. There is hemorrhage and necrosis in the intimal region, connective tissue formation and replacement of muscle fibers with fibrosis, and there is sealing of lumen that leads to ultimately formation of ligamentum arteriosum. So, duct dependent disease. These are the diseases where the newborn child requires flow through ductus for survival. So the duct dependent for systemic blood flow are those which have obstruction in the arch. So hypoplastic left arch syndrome, critical aortic stenosis, coarctation of aorta and interrupted arch, they require duct dependent flow to the system. And duct dependent cyanotic lesions, these are the lesions where patent ductus is required for flow to lungs, like in pulmonary atresia, critical pulmonary stenosis, and to ensure adequate mixing as in transposition of great arteries with intact septum. Now physiology depends on 5 factors. Those 5 factors are the size of the ductus, pulmonary vascular resistance, adaptive response of LV to volume overload, prematurity and respiratory distress. All these factors depend on the size of the shunt, and size of the shunt depends on the following factors. The physiology of patent ductus arteriosus is left to right shunting. So when there is left to right shunting, there is increased pulmonary blood flow, which leads to arteriolar medial hypertrophy and intimal proliferation and fibrosis, and this progressively causes increase in pulmonary vascular resistance, and as the vascular resistance exceeds systemic resistance, there is reversal of shunt, and this is what we call Eisenmenger syndrome. Now coming to classification of PDA, Isolated PDAs are often categorized according to the degree of left to right shunting, and that is determined by both size, length of the duct, and difference between systemic and pulmonary vascular resistance. And it is classified as follows: silent, that is a tiny PDA detected only by non-clinical means, usually echocardiography. Small PDA, continuous murmur is common, and the QP by QS is less than 1.5. Moderate size PDA, we see continuous murmur, but QP by QS is between 1.5 to 2.2. And a large PDA, there is continuous murmur present with QP by QS more than 2.2. Now coming to anatomical classification, it was given by Krichenko et al. In 1989. It is the angiographic classification. The class A is a conical duct with prominent aortic ampulla and constriction towards the pulmonary end. B is window-like, that is very wide and very short ductus. C is tubular ductus without any constrictions. D is complex ductus with multiple constrictions, and E is elongated ductus with constriction remote. Coming to natural history of PDA, natural history depends on the size of the PDA and gestational age of the patient. Now, spontaneous closure of ductus occurs where the Campbell study shows that 0.6% of patients per year, and this rate is constant for the first 4 decades of life. General agreement is that the spontaneous closure is uncommon beyond 3 to 5 months of full term infant. It can be extended up to 1 year for preterm infant, and delayed closure is in preterm infant. PDA can lead to subacute bacterial endocarditis. Primarily, it is seen in children with small ducts where the jet velocity is high. 0.5% incidence is seen in the antibiotic era. In pre-antibiotic era, it was one of the major causes of death. Another sequelae is respiratory infections. This occurs due to increased pulmonary blood flow, and death due to pneumonia may occur in very large shunts, but it is uncommon in small shunts. Ultimately, there is pulmonary vascular disease if PDA is left untreated. Pulmonary endothelial injury due to increased pulmonary blood flow, it causes enhanced reactivity of vascular endothelium, and there is increased pulmonary vascular resistance, and progressively it leads to pulmonary irreversible anatomical changes, and finally Eisenmenger syndrome. It is seen rapidly in infants with large PDA, and it is rarely seen in small defects. Congestive heart failure. It may present in early infant life. It is poorly tolerated. Systemic hypoperfusion is there, which leads to renal failure, pulmonary edema, sometimes even necrotizing enterocolitis. And CHF leads to death in 30% of untreated children with large PDA. Death in untreated PDA in infancy, mortality is high, approximately 30% in the earlier era. After infancy, annual death rate decreases. It is about 0.5% per year for the first 2 decades. In third decade, it is 1% per year, and fourth decade, it is 1.8%. And in subsequent decades, it is 4%. And approximately 60% of the patients die by the age of 45 years. Modes of death in infants, it is usually congestive heart failure, recurrent respiratory tract infections which terminate into pneumonia, but it is less common. Large PDA who survive infancy, death is usually due to acute or chronic right heart failure, that is secondary to increase in pulmonary vascular resistance, and it is seen usually in second or third decade of life. And moderate PDA, the mode of death in third or fourth decade of life is heart failure, and the Campbell study estimated that heart failure was the cause of death in 30% of the patients. Clinical features. It ranges from being asymptomatic, murmur on examinations, to symptoms of congestive heart failure caused by large left to right shunting. Manifestations of pulmonary overcirculation include hypotension, pulmonary edema, and failure to thrive in infants and in children. And Premature neonates demonstrate intestinal malperfusion and renal insufficiency in addition to respiratory compromise. All these, the malperfusion is seen due to the runoff of blood into PDA, and cyanosis is occasionally seen when the shunt reverses. It is differential cyanosis, that is, saturation is lower in the lower extremities. Wide pulse pressure is present because of diastolic runoff, and the precordium is hyperactive. On auscultation, there is continuous machinery murmur which is audible in left infraclavicular area. Usually the murmur starts at the first start sound, peaks at second heart sound or just after second heart sound, and then decreases. Clinically, the diastolic phase might not be heard very well, but in large shunts, one can very well appreciate machinery murmur. And there is also a diastolic murmur due to flow across the mitral valve, which is heard when there is large shunting in large PDA. Along with that, there is large pulmonary component of the second heart sound. Again, there is increased blood flow and increased excursion of pulmonary valve. And in patients who have reversal of flow, again, as I said, there is differential cyanosis and saturation in the lower extremity is less than the one in the upper extremity. Coming to investigations, ECG, for moderate to large PDA, again there is a P mitral due to dilatation of left atrium. There is left axis deviation. There is mild PR prolongation. Atrial fibrillation is common in older patients, and left ventricular volume overload is seen by the deep Q waves and increased R wave voltage in the left precordial leads. When there is significant pulmonary vascular disease or Eisenmenger syndrome, there is P pulmonale. So, and right axis deviation with tall R wave inverted T in right sided precordial leads and prominent S waves in the left sided precordial leads. Chest X-ray. In moderate to large PDA, there is enlarged pulmonary trunk and its proximal branches, enlargement of the LA and LV due to volume overload, increased in pulmonary vascularity. When the shunt is reversed, there is reduced pulmonary vascularity, there is peripheral pruning that we say, dilatation of pulmonary trunk and its proximal branches still persist. Normal or near normal LV and LA, and hypertrophied but not significantly dilated right ventricle. So this is the chest X-ray where we see pulmonary plethora, pulmonary artery is dilated, LV type of apex with shift towards down and out. Whenever there is reversal of shunt or Eisenmengerization, as we can see, there is decreased pulmonary vascularity, peripheral pruning, but MPA is still dilated, branch PAs are still dilated, and there is near normal ventricle. Echocardiogram, we can easily diagnose PDA on echocardiogram. We can know the size, the direction and the severity of the shunt, and parasternal short axis and suprasternal views are the preferred views for diagnosis of PDA. This is parasternal long axis view. We can appreciate the left atrial enlargement and left ventricular enlargement. Cardiac catheterization, it is not routinely done nowadays because diagnosis can be very sensitive and specific in echocardiography itself. But here we can see the catheter trajectory. Catheter may be easily passed from PA to aorta through PDA, and it gives a specific hairpin appearance. MRI and CT scan are also not done routinely unless there is associated other defects. Magnetic resonance imaging or MRI and CT may be useful in defining the anatomy in patients with unusual PDA geometry and in patients with associated abnormalities. Coming to management of PDA, it can be divided into three parts: medical, surgical and transcatheter. In medical management, we can again say divide it into two, for closure of duct as well as management of symptoms. For closure of duct, for premature infants, indomethacin is the first line drug. As we discussed, premature infants are more sensitive to prostaglandins to maintain patency of the duct. So we give NSAIDs like indomethacin and ibuprofen. But indomethacin has side effects of bleeding tendency due to platelet dysfunction also. There is decreased urine output secondary to renal dysfunction and necrotizing enterocolitis. So even ibuprofen can be used and it has achieved similar closure rates with less renal toxicity as compared to indomethacin. Now medical management of symptoms, first treatment of congestive cardiac failure. So diuretics are the mainstay. Along with that, we can reduce the peripheral vascular systemic vascular resistance by ACE inhibitors. Digoxin is no longer preferred, and there is no need to continue long term in some patients even after the closure of duct. Atrial fibrillation, it is the most common arrhythmia seen with PDA. We need to give anticoagulation and antiarrhythmics, and it may terminate after successful closure of PDA. Infective endocarditis prophylaxis, it is not required if corrected more than 6 months with no residual shunt. Unacceptable candidates for definitive closure. For those we want to decrease the pulmonary vascular resistance by using of pulmonary vasodilators like prostacyclin, calcium channel blockers, endothelin antagonists and phosphodiesterase type 5 inhibitors. Coming to percutaneous closure, it is the preferred method nowadays. So the absolute contraindication is reversal of shunt and Eisenmenger syndrome. The relative contraindications would be unfavorable anatomy, a very large duct where there is no suitable device, associated peripheral pulmonary stenosis or coarctation of aorta or any complex defect, and when the weight is less than 6 kg where surgery is the treatment of choice, or when there is silent PDA where we can wait and the shunt is very small. Coils, these are the devices used in transcatheter approach for closure of PDA. Gianturco coil is the most widely used coil. It functions by causing thrombus in the PDA. The disadvantage of coils is that it can embolize and it cannot be retrieved. The devices that are used in transcatheter are Emplitzer device. This is Emplitzer device occluder 1, Emplitzer device occluder 2. And again it is cone shaped. When applied across PDA, it has a mesh and causes thrombogenesis and ultimate closure of PDA. Open approach or surgical closure. Conventional exposure is required for duct division in patients with large ducts or large shunt and with calcified ducts, which is not amenable to transcatheter approach, and there is some complication like bleeding during an endoscopic procedure. The indications of surgery are for small PDA to prevent subacute bacterial endocarditis, for moderate size PDA to control failure and prevent immediate and long-term complications. For large PDA, there is life-threatening cardiopulmonary failure and associated complications. In premature infants, small and asymptomatic, we can wait for spontaneous closure. But for large and symptoms like CHF, we need to go for surgical closure immediately. When symptoms are under control, we can go for medical closure like indomethacin therapy. When it fails, we need to go for surgery. Timing of closure in infants and young children. For large and moderate PDA with symptoms of CHF, pulmonary artery hypertension, early closure is class 1 recommendation. Early is by 3 to 6 months. In moderate PDA without any symptoms, we can wait till 1 year, which is class 1 indication, 6 months to 1 year. And in small PDA, we can wait for 12 to 18 months. And in silent PDA, closure is not recommended. Surgical approaches are two types, right lateral thoracotomy or by median sternotomy. Here we can see right lateral thoracotomy approach. Patient is in right lateral decubitus position. Posterolateral thoracotomy, incision is given, latissimus dorsi and serratus anterior are divided, and we enter through third intercostal space. It can be third or fourth. After entering the left hemithorax, upper lobe of lung is retracted. Retraction sutures can be placed. First landmark we can identify is the intercostal vein crossing the pleura, and it lies just above the PDA. The vein is ligated and divided. Pleura is incised. We need to identify the arch of the aorta and takeoff of left subclavian artery. We also need to identify left pulmonary artery, and the artery connecting between them is the PDA. Another landmark is vagus nerve, which gives rise to recurrent laryngeal nerve, which hooks across the PDA and goes above in the neck. After clearly identifying the PDA, after correctly identifying the PDA, we proceed towards dissection. The upper and lower end are dissected using cautery, taking care to avoid injury to recurrent laryngeal nerve. The posterior dissection is done with blunt forceps, as recurrent laryngeal nerve runs behind the PDA. After passing the forceps around the PDA, either we can pass the ligature, or we can proceed to transfix the PDA on both ends using monofilament Prolene sutures. First ligation is done towards aorta and followed by that towards the pulmonary end. And after ligating the duct, we divide the duct, and both the duct ends are oversewn using Prolene sutures. Now coming to midline sternotomy approach, dissection of the plane between aorta and main pulmonary artery, which is often vascular in acyanotic patient, is done. Care is taken to avoid injury, excessive pulling and stretching. Right pulmonary artery origin orients the dissection of the PDA. The dissection is carried out further beneath the ductus. The pericardium over the left pulmonary artery is open to allow dissection in the angle between the duct and the left pulmonary artery. And freeing the ductus posteriorly with right angle clamp allows the sutures to be passed. Again, we need to correctly identify the PDA and differentiate it from the left sided pulmonary artery, because left pulmonary artery may be by mistake ligated along with PDA. Sometimes even descending aorta can be ligated. So sutures are tied with minimal retraction on the main pulmonary artery to avoid suture cut through, and the duct is divided with venotomy scissors. Clamping and oversewing the aortic pulmonary ends may be necessary. And precise suture placement at left pulmonary artery origin minimizes the risk of stenosis. Complications of PDA ligation. Bleeding, it is the most dreaded complication. PDA needs to be handled very gently in order to avoid any injury to the duct or any shearing, which may lead to torrential bleeding from PA as well as aorta. Persistent ductal patency or recanalization may occur after ductal ligation. accidental ligation of aorta or pulmonary artery may occur. Hence, it is essential that we identify all the elements of aortic arch and everything is dissected before ductal ligation. There may be injury to thoracic duct, which may lead to chylothorax. Injury to recurrent laryngeal nerve injury, again use of cautery near the nerve is hazardous, and we should try to do blunt dissection at the lower ductal angle and in the posterior part. Now another approach is VATS. VATS is video assisted thoracoscopic surgery and ligation of PDA. It was first performed by Francois Laborde in 1991. Again, patient is in right lateral decubitus position. A transesophageal echographic probe is advanced into the esophagus and the anatomy is confirmed, and it is performed through 3 to 4 ports. As we can see, the placement of the ports. Again, in VATS approach also, we need to carefully identify the PDA, dissect around the PDA, and then clip is applied. It could be either hemoclip or metallic clip. Now outcomes. Mortality, surgical mortality is less than 1% for both the techniques. Complication is again injury to recurrent laryngeal nerve, which in long term leads to hoarseness. Left phrenic nerve injury may also occur, which leads to paralysis of left diaphragm. Thoracic duct injury causes chylothorax, and recanalization may occur. Thank you.